All right, everyone, we are ready for our third and final panel. Did everyone have a tasty and recharging lunch? Show of hands, lunch was amazing, right? And a big thanks to Lori. If you haven't met Lori yet, she has pretty much run the show here today and it's been phenomenal. Our last panel today is very exciting. We're going to be talking about list optimization, some deliverability elements, how to avoid bulking. I think it's a very, very important topic. It's often one that sometimes takes a back seat, thinking about sender reputation, ISP relations. At the end of the day, if we're not getting in the inbox, and it doesn't really matter how great our email program is, right? So we're going to be diving into that a bit. We'll also be looking at some really cool segmentation and trigger elements. So I'll let the panel introduce themselves, and I think I'm going to actually sit down here and join these gentlemen.
Nice. All right, well, I'm Jamie Braxton. I work at US Mattress. I've been there about 8 years now. I built our email program from the ground up. I built our loyalty program as well. Other than that, I do like our reviews, our little bit of social. Wear a lot of hats there, but it's a smaller company, so it's expected.
I'm Brett Rudolph from GlassesUSA.com. I've been there for about 5 years now. I like to play around in different areas of the marketing. One of the things I do is email. I've been on email with them for I think about 3 years, 4 years. We started with Constant Contact, just bulking everybody, and then moved over to a little bit better of an ESP and started doing some more exciting things. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So I think to kick things off, we'll talk a little bit about using certain metrics, open rates, et cetera, and kind of measuring intent with email. So kind of starting with Jamie, do you have any kind of specific thoughts around intent and how to measure?
It's actually, if I remember correctly, that was more your specialty.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it for a little while. So intent, if you don't have a lot of technology built on top of your ESP, intent can be somewhat hard to measure. So it's all about finding upper funnel metrics that you can use to then measure whether or not the customer is likely to make some sort of action on the website. So when we moved over to a stronger ESP, what we did was we split up our entire database into segments based on their open rate. And then with open rate, we found that over time, people basically funnel through different open rate segments based on their interest in your product. And then higher open rate segments generally tend to buy more often just because they've gone from a low open rate to a high open rate. It's showing that they're starting to be more interested in your product, and they could generally be waiting for a more specific email to them or a better offer. So also it's a nice place where you can start to personalize the elements a little bit and start giving more hyper-targeted messages still within the general blast email section of the strategy.
Got it. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And from a kind of sender reputation and deliverability perspective, are you looking at engagement metrics like open rate to help prevent bulking?
Not necessarily to stop bulking, but I mean, if again, it goes back to intent. If somebody's clicking on the emails, unless they're a bot, generally they're looking at something. And if they're a bot, then you can basically say, okay, I've got like a ridiculously high click rate for the specific customer, but they're not actually doing anything on the website. So you can start to filter them out of your segments as well and not send to those people because they're generally either they're just browsing products or they're not actually a human being.
Got it. No, perfect. And on the topic of bulking, I'm curious, Jamie, do you have any specific tips on how to prevent bulking and prevent landing in blacklists?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a few things you can do. One, I want to say you have to send relevant content. I feel like that's probably first and foremost is relevancy. Second, you really need to segment your list based off of the most recent opens. I know in the past for us, we used to bulk as well, and it would just send to everyone. But our deliverability was in the toilet, basically. So once we start segmenting and sending it into like list of the last 6 months at the worst, it allowed us to bring our deliverability back up to where it should be.
So to clarify, are you saying that if someone hasn't engaged in 6 months, then you're suppressing them, or no?
We have a win-back program. So once we put them in that win-back program, if they don't respond to those actions, that's when we just opt them completely out the list because they've shown no intent to engage at all.
In terms of measurement of bulking, are you using a third party like return path, or are you looking at kind of severe dips in open rate as a leading indicator?
I look at our internal metrics. We use Silverpop, so I look at our metrics with that. They have a pretty good way of measuring your deliverability and your by not ESP, but by channel. So Google, Hotmail, Yahoo, they break it all out, and it lets us know when we're red flagged or if it's green. Hotmail is probably always going to be a problem child for us, but it goes in and out. But the rest of them, we've been green for years now.
Sure, sure. And I think a lot of pushback that we see with some of our clients and that I've heard from some of the attendees today is, like we may know that the strategy is to either put into win back or to suppress at a certain point for sender reputation and bulking purposes. But what about when upper management is just adamant about hitting revenue goals and we need to continue sending to the entire list? What would be some tips for the audience on how to combat some of those pushbacks?
So when you're dealing with upper management, it's all about the bottom line, and you need to show them that bulking is, in a way, when you just send with bulk, it's like you're just casting a big net. But if you just show them that if you send less, you can spend less at the same time as make more, and you're in more inboxes, they'll be more prone to agree with you. Plus, I believe it's best to show them benchmarks. So show them your open rate and your click-through rates currently, and then say, hey, we're batch and blasting over here, and we're probably like 30 or 40% under what the industry standards are. But if we actually do it this way, we can improve and actually make more money. So I think it's the metrics also with showing them how it affects the bottom line.
Yep, no, that makes sense. And Brett, do you have any additional tips on dealing with other departments or upper management when it kind of comes to list sculpting and suppression?
Upper management is always going to be under the impression that sending a lot is the way to go. I know there's also been kind of from like the opposite standpoint where upper management thinks that I'm sending too much, where they're basically saying, okay, you're making our brand look bad. So at that point, it's either a case of basically showing them the bottom line, showing how much revenue is actually being driven, or show them a number of other examples of companies that are sending a daily email or twice a days. I think today, dailies and twice a days have become pretty much standard practice across the board. So basically a way to show, or not show, but to keep quality high while still maintaining send frequency.
Yep, no, that makes sense. I think there's always going to still be that pushback of, even though we know that it might impact deliverability and our ability to actually get in the inbox for all of our subscribers, depending on the size of the organization, just kind of the pure math of we need to be sending to our entire house list. So I agree, kind of building that business case, looking at past engagement and metrics to further prove that. So kind of segueing in, let's say we actually do start bulking or land in a spam house or a blacklist. What are some ways to get out of that? We'll start there, and I have a follow-up to that. So Jamie, do you want to start there?
Yeah, so when we went from a smaller ESP to Silverpop, we found out we were in about 50 different spam houses just from batching and blasting. So the first thing you have to do is just work with whoever your ESP rep is. They should have some tips, some pointers to help you get back on the right track. So we did that. We worked with them. We started off sending within the past 6 months, but we narrowed it down to 90 days, so we get a higher engagement rate. So the higher engagement rate helped us get our average inbox rate up a lot faster. So we got out those spam houses. It took a few months, but we cleaned it all up.
So pretty much where you're identifying your highest engaged subscribers and almost kind of rewarming the relationship?
Yeah, basically.
Brett, have you had to deal with anything in your company where you've had kind of severe delivery issues?
We were put in a spam box once, and basically we communicated with Zen Spam House, and we basically explained to them that there was a severe technical error on our end, and we just explained the situation and why it happened and why it shouldn't happen moving forward, and they were relatively cooperative about getting us out of the spam house. But in general, from speaking to other people, communication with these spam houses is pretty difficult, but it's basically you need to be upfront with them and basically list the steps that you're going to take to make sure that you're more compliant with what they're looking for in the future.
Yeah, exactly. We see similar things where being kind of just very transparent about the kind of root cause of it. Here's what we're going to do to correct it, and then approach it in a collaborative manner of how do we improve, what are some things that you'd like us to see as a sender to do to improve, and then usually we're able to get out. So Jamie, in your experience, it took a couple months. Was that to get to pristine 100% inboxing, or was that just to get above the fold and have any traction?
It took a few months just to get back in the green.
Okay.
We were in the red, so bouncing back from that, it takes time and scrubbing another list, and you gotta, put some things on your site to get some new customers and some new subscribers, so you can constantly weed out the bad but bring in the good at the same time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies, they'll wait until there's a severe event to then start taking list hygiene seriously, right? It's more of a reactionary thing where we hit spam house and we're blocked. We're having horrible Gmail issues. Now let's start thinking about really pristine list hygiene. So definitely would recommend being proactive about that. The last thing we want is 2 days before Black Friday to have a huge hit and no time to get out of it. So we'll come back to deliverability and bulking in a bit. Circling back around to another topic, just in terms of automations. Curious what automations you've seen work really, really well. So we'll kind of switch gears to the list segmentation and automation topic.
Just in terms of list segmentation, I can't speak to all of your products, but given that we're more or less a single product company, for us, one of the most major breakthroughs that we had was basically taking like an upper funnel category and using that as the basis of our major segmentation. So for us, it was segmenting based on the list type, and just doing that, or sorry, not the list type, the lens type, and just doing that basically splits our category into two very different groups where I can start giving targeted offers towards the different type. And then I've already identified the two major purchase groups. And then from there, straight away, we started to see like an increase in ASP because I'm not offering a very aggressive, irrelevant offer to one of the groups.
No, yeah, that's interesting. In addition to the segmentation based on type, are you doing for regular email segmentation on customer versus non-customer?
Yeah, so our list is, from the get-go, it's separated into purchasers and people that haven't yet bought. And then frequency changes depending on those two major segments, and also the offer changes. If I've got a specific offer that I'm offering to people or incentive to sign up, then I'm not going to offer them anything more aggressive than that. There's just no reason to. They signed up for a specific offer. I can play around in that area. Once they do start to hit the drop-off points of where I need to start re-engaging them, that's where I can start being a little bit more aggressive. And then on the customer side, I can start doing neat things where if I've offered them something specific on the first purchase, I can get them to come back for a repurchase pretty quickly by saying, hey, do you want to get this offer on your second purchase too?
Great, and to clarify, is it pretty much every marketing email that you're having multiple versions based on these different segments, or is it only kind of hand-selected?
I would say that I have a limited amount of different emails that I send out and kind of cycle through them, and then within that, based on different lens types or different affinity categories, the major creative's changing, but the basic principle is staying the same. So like if it's a 50% offer, then I'll offer them 50% off a specific category that makes sense in what I've identified as their affinity.
Got it, that makes sense. Jamie, what about you? Are you, I guess let's start with the same topic of versioning based on different segments. Can you elaborate on?
Yeah, well, what we do, we have multiple brands. People primarily purchase mattresses from us. So we segment based off of who bought, who hasn't bought yet. But at the same time, after you buy a mattress, the life cycle of you coming back is extremely long. So it's trying to engage people to buy maybe like sheets or bedding sets or comforters or things like that, because chances are your mattress is going to last 5 to 10 years, and we're not going to send you a mattress email every week for the next 5 to 10 years. So you'll probably unsubscribe if you got that.
So for non-customers, maybe elaborate a little bit more. It's a little off topic, but your kind of aggression in terms of cadence and perhaps promo with customers versus non-customers. So before they get into that long time till next purchase, when they're not there yet, how do you approach that program?
We're more aggressive with the higher end clients because we want our average order tickets and we want the bigger margins. So we send better offers to people who buy like Stearns and Foster's or Tempur-Pedic bases versus people who might buy like a lower level ceiling mattress or something like that. So, I mean, we do it based off of price as well as brand.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of non-customers, I'm definitely a lot more aggressive. Basically, the way I see it is until a customer's bought from you, they have absolutely no brand loyalty, like none whatsoever. So it's basically push them as hard as I can without pushing them too hard to make them make that initial purchase. And once they've made that initial purchase, I can start to push in branded content and kind of get them to be a part of the brand as opposed to only getting sales offers. But basically, that initial push is very aggressive until they buy.
And with Classes USA, are those aggressive pushes heavy in promo?
Yeah. Also, our customer emails are generally relatively heavy in promo. I mean, we all work in e-commerce, and promos are the pushers.
And Jamie, what about you? Also heavy with promo? Or?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some clients that either they have restrictions from the manufacturer or they just have a philosophy of zero promo or one time a year promo. So sometimes having that aggression early on is challenging. We definitely want to garner that first purchase, but coming up with creative ways to tell a story and to get interest in the product without promo sometimes can be daunting. Hypothetical, if you weren't able to do promo, how would you approach that non-customer aggression?
And personally, I'd just show them, at least use my initial emails to kind of show them like a range of what we've got, and then based on their click behavior, if they're clicking through to certain categories, then I'd use that as an identifier towards what they're interested in and then focus on that content and then just basically try whatever I could that isn't promo oriented. So just show them a lot of products, tell them some sort of brand story, give them some sort of content article of why you should buy online. But I don't have very much experience not pushing promo, so.
Yeah, I think if I had to, we would probably use our knowledge base to educate people why a new mattress is important. Not selling it, but just giving articles about better sleep and how it improves your life overall.
Yeah, no, I asked because in some of the roundtables earlier today, there was either the scenario A where they were being limited on promo and didn't have much flexibility, or scenario B where some brands were wanting to decrease promo for ROI purposes. So I wanted to start thinking outside of the box on how we could leverage that. So Brett, in terms of kind of repeat purchase with Jamie's company, it's not a huge repeat purchase until you get into some other cross-sells. Can you elaborate a little bit more on some of the consumer behavior and cycles at Classes?
I mean, without getting too much exactly into our repurchase cycles, basically, if it's not a mattress and it's a consumer product that they're going to buy once a year, once every 2 years, with an online product, generally the prices tend to be lower, so you can generally cut that cycle down by a significant amount, and essentially you can use any of your post-purchase emails as very strong sales pushes for upsells, cross-sells, because I mean, they've still got their wallet out. So getting that repurchase like within the first 2 weeks or 1 month is generally relatively easy compared to a year down the road or 2 years down the road.
Got it. Yeah, and I think it was the keynote Scott that was talking about one of their bigger trigger initiatives was that first initial touches post-purchase. So Jamie, with even though someone's not buying a mattress 4 days after they get their first mattress, have you been successful in having some of those cross-sells with other products?
Yeah, so what we've done, we have campaigns that we just try to either send information or like a soft sale. So maybe it's an information about adjustable bases or the difference between a firm and a soft pillow or something like that. But it's just different ways to just stay engaged with them with articles and then maybe a couple suggested products that are our top sellers.
That makes sense. So if we had to identify, let's say everyone in the audience only was able to segment based on one or two variables, what do you feel are kind of the most important items to segment on?
I think that obviously pre-purchase, post-purchase, those would be the first major win. And then the second one, either based on some sort of on-site behavior, so trying to create some sort of upper funnel affinity, or if you want to do it only on the email side, base it on the upper funnel metrics like open rates.
That's pretty much it.
Okay,
Pretty much
fantastic. So let's talk a bit about decreasing opt-outs. I think on everyone's mind is attrition, especially as we talk about increasing cadence, that having a potentially direct correlation on attrition. What are some thoughts on how to decrease opt-outs?
Don't. I honestly think that opt-outs, they're natural, and in some cases, I mean, we've touched on it a few times today, but in some cases, it's like a really powerful trigger for a wide range of other campaigns. If somebody opts out of email, it's them not necessarily saying that they're not interested in you, they're saying they're not interested in your email. So that's a time where you can start to target them on Facebook or take it offline to direct mail. And also, I mean, if they're opting out of your emails, clearly you've sent them too much, but your strategy could be to send a lot. And if you don't necessarily have the technology to identify customer actions, then I mean you don't want to change your entire strategy based on the chance that one single person is going to opt out.
Sure, yeah, but wouldn't you agree that I agree that someone opting out, it could be an opportunity for another channel or for a learning opportunity, but big picture, we would rather have X% instead of Y% folks opting out. So do you think that would come down more to a cadence conversation or more of a relevancy in content or both?
I mean, it's all about cadence, and at the end of the day, it's a function of the amount of emails that they're going to get. So obviously, you could send less and have your unsubscribe rate's going to stay roughly the same. I mean, there's an industry standard for a reason, so the rate is going to stay the same, but the overall number is going to be the thing that changes.
Okay, that makes sense. So then with classes, if you see a spike 1 month and it's 3x what your normal rate is that usually a cause of concern?
Yeah, then I know I'm doing something wrong and I can change something. But if that rate basically stays standard, I can say a customer is going to receive X amount of emails until they unsubscribe, so I have to make the most of those emails.
Okay. Now, Jamie, do you have a different kind of mindset and approach to that, since you're really garnering for one big purchase and then you're not going to get that purchase for a while after that outside of cross sales? Is it a different game plan to really reduce opt-outs and make sure that you keep people on the list, or do you agree with Brett?
No, I agree with him. I think you're going to see a certain amount, and those opt-outs, you would rather have them opt out than click junk on your emails anyway.
Of course.
If they have subscribed, so I completely agree with him.
Okay, so, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but if there's folks in the audience that want to know, how do I decrease opt-outs? So not necessarily saying that opt-outs are good or bad, but what are some best practice in addition to kind of thinking about cadence if upper management is saying, hey, we've lost X% a month from our list, and we make the case all day long, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What would be some advice to then take to upper management to either A, justify it, or B, with the program to decrease opt-outs?
I mean, you can lower cadence. If we don't want to talk about that, instead of an unsubscribe link, change it to a manage preferences link. Let them go through that funnel. Just the fact that they have to go through another funnel to get there might already be an incentive for them to not unsubscribe. If you want to do it, I wouldn't suggest it, but you can offer the customer a choice as to the cadence they want to get, but that gives them a lot of control over your marketing plan, so I would not necessarily go that route. Also, target the content more to the customer. When somebody's getting content that's relevant to them, they're more likely to identify with it and not unsubscribe. If you're sending them something completely irrelevant, then they can and should unsubscribe from you.
Yeah, I think that relevancy is a big part. For us, what we do is, if we know you're into Serta mattresses, we're not going to send you a Sealy mattress or a Tempur-Pedic pillows. We're going to send you Serta products or products that complement Serta well. So it's all about relevancy and making sure that's what they want to see in the first place.
Got it. And you mentioned an interesting point in terms of preferences and opt-down. Have both of you tested or have in place cadence adjustments at time of opt-out? So instead of just an option to unsubscribe at that juncture, giving an option to downshift?
I haven't.
I mean, I didn't necessarily give them the choice of cadence. I made it seem like I was giving them the choice of cadence. So I basically asked the customer what style of emails they want to get. So if it was promotional emails or daily deals or other things along those lines, which is essentially them telling me send me an email every day because they're all promotional, but it makes them feel like they're making an active choice as to the cadence that they're going to get. And then moving forward, even though they're getting the same emails that they would have, they made that active choice to get those emails.
Sure. And to clarify, is that at kind of time of opt-in and preference center, or is that at time of opt-out, giving them the option?
So today I've got an option in I've got a specific post or purchase email for a managed preferences where I'm asking a few more pieces of information about the customer. So moving forward, I can be more targeted, but then also at the bottom of the email in the canned spam footer, I've got unsubscribe and manage preferences.
Okay, got it. So real quick, back to kind of segmentation and having different versions of emails. Do you ever run into a situation where potentially too many versions, there's a cap where it's just not worth the resources to build it out? And what does that look like? So we've seen some brands have on upwards of 100 different versions of the same email with dynamic content, and I think there's an argument that from a resource and creative and execution perspective, sometimes A, that's overkill, and then B, there's just not the resources to do that. So I'm curious, have you reached that cap where you've gotten to a certain amount of different versions and it just doesn't have the ROI after that?
Well, for us, no. We don't have that. We definitely don't have 100. That's insane. No offense to anyone, but yeah, we don't. I mean, we're a small email team. It's just myself, and then every now and then I have a graphic designer. So just to manage it myself, I mean, we have it separated by mattresses, linens, and furniture, pretty much.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I've never got to the point where it's too many. I mean, for like a bulk list or a segmented list, with our product, I don't really see how many different variations we could have. On the automation side, however, I would say there's absolutely no limit. Like if it's an automated campaign, let's say you start off with 20 variations, a week later to add one more variation isn't really a lot of work, and it just stays within the automation. There's no daily maintenance really, and it's just easy wins day after day.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. So we're almost out of time. I want to open it up to the audience if there's questions for the panelists. Any questions?
My name is Damien. I'm with J.Crew. So I wanted to go back to the opt-outs, because when you're saying, oh, you'd rather just have them opt out because there's a limit to what you're going to hit. We've had some success with creating an opt-out model where we can actually predict when we think somebody's going to opt out and cool them down for X amount of time. We're actually working on a preliminary to that where we see you heading towards that, and we'll actually cool down how much we're sending in a week. Because when we look at the value of having an email address for somebody versus not having an email address, there's a much higher lifetime value for that person in the year. So I think if you're giving somebody the option to say, hey, I don't want to receive this type of email, but actually you're still sending them an email every day because every email is promotional, does that not create like a negative effect for the brand for when you have customers come in?
To an extent, I'm sure it does. But at the same time, let's say I sign up to get promotional emails. I've made that choice, right? It's an active choice on my part. So let's say the next day I get a promotional email, you're getting what you asked for. Like even though it's not necessarily me cutting frequency or cutting cadence, I'm still sending that customer what they wanted or what they wanted.
I think your point is that if we lose the opt-out, then we lose a potential purchase down the road. Yeah.
No, but this is a customer that hasn't bought ever. If they haven't bought, they have no loyalty.
Right, but are you still not just blasting all of your customers?
No, once the person's purchased, it's a different cycle. It's different content, different offers. I know a lot more about that person, so I can start to be much more targeted. But before a person's bought, they have no loyalty to me, so I want to get that order.
Be as aggressive as possible to garner that first purchase.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we wrap up? All right, well, big thanks to our panelists. Give them a round of applause.